So the first question that I got from my followers is that they really want to know how long they should speak for one question in part one in the IELTS speaking.
Okay, so that's definitely a very interesting question. So mostly within part one, we have at least two different sets of questions, and they would almost amount to maybe 12 number of questions, or it could be somewhere between 6 to 12 number of questions. So it can vary depending upon your answers and your pace of talking as well. So what I would recommend is not focus more on the length of how much you're talking, but more on how many sentences that you're using. So what I mostly ask or suggest my students to do is speak for at least maybe 3 to 4 sentences for part one. And again, the time that you take for speaking or responding to a particular question varies from a person to person, right? Maybe your mode of speaking will be very fast, that you will cover those 3 to 4 sentences within maybe 60 seconds. But if it is someone else, they will take more time. So I suggest that you at least respond in 3 to 4 sentences for part one.
Okay, so basically it doesn't like the length of the answer is not really doesn't really matter, right? So the number of
Yes,
sentences
yes. The
matter more.
more content that you have inside within those sentences, that's what matters more. Especially because we can't predict that a person's pace of talking is similar to someone else. What are your thoughts on this?
So I think it's a really good thing. I never thought of that, because I often tell my students that, see, don't speak too fast, but don't speak too slow. So I often tell my students that don't speak too long also, because the more you speak, the more mistakes you might make. And when you make mistakes, of course, you lose some points and you don't get the score you would like to get. So that's what I often tell my students and also my followers. But I think your point of view is quite interesting because it does really depend on your speed of speaking, basically. I am actually a fast speaker. So I speak fast, even in my language or in English. It doesn't really matter what kind of language I'm speaking. But I guess it really makes sense that how many sentences you should put in. So you are talking about 3 to 4 sentences, yeah?
Yes, yes. And to be honest, as an added thought, I would say that the length of your answer is the least of your worry. Because
Mhm.
if suppose you are speaking at length, then the examiner will skip to the next question. They will interrupt
Right.
you and continue to the next question. In fact, they have a time limit, right? For the part one, the time limit is 4 to 5 minutes. They don't even take 1 second or minute more than that. So
Mhm.
they'll try to cover the questions within that time. So it's not your way how long you speak or not. The point that you have to remember is not speak too less, but not to speak a lot as well. So it should be somewhere in between, a moderate amount, depending upon your pace of speaking. So sometimes a person can speak just 2 sentences, and within that itself, they'll be covering that time period. And the examiner will go to the next question. And at the same time, even the quality of your answer matters more. That's what I feel like. If your answer, even if it is in 2 or 3 sentences, if the quality of it is much more, then they will definitely go to the next question and ask you that. So you will still be able to gain a better score.
Do you think that this advice would also apply to part three?
Not really. Some of it applies to part three. For example, focusing more on the quality does apply, but quantity also matters much more in part three. You're supposed to speak a little bit more, expand your answers, add more details, maybe give few examples, and explain your reasons for your answer within the part three. So even if you're not doing the same, the examiner might prompt you to do the same. Like they may ask, "Can you give me an example of the same?" Or they may ask, like, "Why do you think that is? Why do you think your opinion on this particular topic is so and so?" So even if you don't give an explanation, they will definitely ask. But I would say, definitely don't give them a chance to ask that question. Give right away your explanation, reasoning, and examples within your answer. So I would say the length of your part three matters a little bit more. Maybe you can answer within 6 or 8 sentences, again based on the pace of your talking. But if you cover maybe within 6 sentences, you're covering your opinion, if you're covering your reasons of saying why you are saying so, why your opinion is so and so, and if you're even giving an example within that time period, the examiner will not even ask you a further question on that. They will move to the next question within the script. That's what I
Mhm.
feel. So definitely quantity matters within part 3 than part 1. But at the same time, over there, you need to cover more points, more details.
Mhm.
Details are what they're looking for, because when you speak with details, your language will be assessed a little bit more. That's what I feel like, especially when
Mhm.
you're maybe going into an example, you're describing something, then a lot more of your words that are within you and that whatever you have learned
Mhm.
will
Mhm.
be put to more usage over there.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
then they will be able to analyze how your fluency is, how your vocabulary is, and all other aspects of speaking criteria that the examiners are looking for within your
Oh
answers.
yeah,
So
I think
that's
it's
what
a
I
very
think.
good point. So I actually have read a few posts online of people, like when you go online, you see a lot of sample answers of people giving out the questions and then they give like sample answers. Even though I think it's a good way to learn, but normally you tend to write more than you speak, right? So when I read the answers, I'd be
Yeah.
like, isn't it too long? Right? Because like this much, So I think that it's not really about so when I teach, I often tell my students, okay, in the beginning, maybe you can write down your answers, okay? But after you write it down, you should read it aloud to see whether it fits your speaking style or not, because you tend to write long and more than what you speak. So that's why I think that a lot of people, when they go online because they don't have any teacher, especially people who are self-studying, they read a lot of samples, they read a lot of advice, and they get confused how much I should speak for part one, how much I should speak for part three. And a lot of people give different opinions, right? So that's why they get a little bit of confusion over here. But I agree with you. I strongly agree with you that in part three, you need to speak a little longer than part one. And that's why part three is a little bit more difficult than part one and part two, I guess.
Yes, yes, yes. But I kind of feel there
Hmm.
is a lot more fun in part 3, because
Hmm.
somebody is willing to ask you
Hmm.
your perspective on things.
Hmm.
How many chances do you get every single day to speak at length on a particular topic, especially
That's
from
true.
your point of view? So
Hmm.
I think it's a lot fun that you
Hmm.
can express your opinion, like somebody is there to listen to your answer, your point of view. And I think at the same time there is a confusion I have read somewhere, and just since we were discussing the topic, it came to my mind. I have heard that some people think that if they have a very different perspective or point of view from the examiner's point of view,
Hmm.
then it could lead to like affecting their scores.
Okay, so that's exactly what I am also thinking about, because this is really fun topic to talk about, because when you talk about your opinion, it's like, okay, so what if the examiner doesn't agree with me? What if he doesn't like my opinion? What doesn't like my idea? I'd be like, okay, so what?
Because they are seeing thousands of people on a regular basis, they are
Mhm,
examining many people
mhm,
on a regular basis, and none of them are going to have almost the same perspective. It will be different answers, and that is why we can never have scripted answers or one single answer for IELTS as well. Like each person will have a
correct.
different point of view and a different answer, and all the answers are valid in some way or the other, as long as you
Mhm,
are sticking to
mhm,
a lot of technicalities of language as well, as in grammar I'm talking about. Other than that, you can have many different sorts of answers. You can answer the same question in a different way. And even if the examiner questions your point of view, sometimes they do that, right? They'll bring about a point of view that is different from our own, and will try to test you a little bit on the same. Even if that happens, you're still supposed to justify your point of view and stick with it if possible, or you can agree to the examiner as well if you feel like you can agree to the statement, and still have a middle ground somewhere.
mhm,
Stick with the middle ground
mhm,
where you agree to them, but at the same time you have your point of view as well. So
mhm,
I don't think it really
mhm.
matters whether you agree or not to them, because that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to analyze your language. It doesn't matter if you have a
Correct.
very different point of view.
And also, it is impossible to know what they have in mind. Is it possible to know what they really believe in, right? So how are you gonna make sure that they agree with you, right? So I think it's more like an Asian style of thinking because from Vietnam, right? So in Asia, we don't tend to disagree with the teachers, right? We
And our
don't want
parents
to. Yeah, and our parents,
get into the
as
bad
long
books.
yeah, that's true. So that's why it's kind of it gets into our minds that okay, what if they don't agree with us? They're gonna deduct our score, it's gonna affect our score. But I can tell very frankly and very confidently that it's not the case. Okay, it's not the case at all. So it doesn't really matter what they believe in, as long as you use good English to express what you believe in. It doesn't matter because IELTS is for English. It's not the social knowledge test or whatsoever, right? So it's better to just get it out of your mind at the moment. Like, okay, don't care about what they believe. Okay, and even also in real life, actually, it's like that, right? So we all have our opinions about certain topics, and we it happens that we don't agree with each other, right? So why do we have to entertain other people talking, agreeing with them? When you get the cue card, you get 2 minutes to speak. So the question is, if I don't speak for 2 minutes, maybe just 1.5 minutes, would it affect my score in your opinion?
No, I don't think so. So you can speak the time limit as per my knowledge. I feel like you can speak anywhere between 1 to 2 minutes, even if it is halfway after 1 minute, it's completely fine. As long as you're covering all the hints that have been provided to you. So there are a set of hints on the cue card, right? So you need to answer all of it. At the same time, you need to answer the main question that has been given to you, the cue card question. So if you're completing that within that limited amount of time, again, if you have a very fast mode of speaking or pace of talking, then you would definitely complete it within less time, right?
Mhm.
So it's not entirely necessary that you complete that 2 minutes of time. And again, we are not superhumans to know like whether it is exactly 2 minutes or has it crossed a little bit over 2 minutes, or is it a little less than 2 minutes, right? the
Mhm.
if you exceed the 2 minutes time period, definitely the examiner may interrupt you and go on to the follow-up questions. But other than that, if you're speaking only for one and around 1 minute and maybe 40 seconds or so, I think it's completely fine. It doesn't affect your score much, as long as you're covering all the hints and giving answers to everything, and you are having a structure to your answer. That's what I believe in.